In this video, Lonerbox reacts to a fiery debate hosted by Piers featuring diverse perspectives on the ongoing war in Ukraine. From Scott Horton's provocative claims about US involvement to Rob O'Neill's insights as a former Navy SEAL, and Anastasia Paraskovova's Ukrainian perspective, the discussion explores the war's economic and military toll on Russia and Ukraine, as well as Western support for the conflict.
She's there with Jenk. Look at her face. She's fucking furious. Okay, good.
Biden made this country and these people promises he could not keep. It's Biden's betrayal.
No research today? Later.
This wars are not about America. This war is about our very long time, centuries-long oppressor trying to thrust us back under their control.
The book is not called Justified, why Russia had to do what they had to do.
Are you done with Russian propaganda?
That's all anyone ever says is that this is Russian propaganda, but that's just a bunch
because
of
it
crap.
is. Are you getting money or not?
Oh, give me a break. No one in America cares about Russia at all, lady.
Can you shut up for a second?
Trump's main bluff is, I'll make this war much bigger if you mess with me. What if Putin says, yeah, go ahead? Well, then we're in a lot of trouble.
I've never seen you quite this angry.
Piers, I'm angry about hearing the misinformation. Stop, stop. You owe us $1 trillion in destruction of our country.
Uh-oh. Trouble.
We can stop talking about the risk of World War III. It's already begun. That was a chilling warning of two United States national security experts this week. And the evidence is certainly mounting. Syria, Gaza, Lebanon, Ukraine are all red hot. They're all regional proxy wars with the United States at their apex, whether most voters want it to stay there or not. Our debate has been focused on Joe Biden's disastrous decision to pardon Hunter Biden, his son, and the cover it provides for Trump's own clemencies. But Trump's war strategy will have much bigger consequences, and the world is awaiting his answers. He campaigned and won with a populist anti-war message, but now he's warning that Hamas will have hell to pay if it fails to release the hostages, and he has a cabinet with a bite to match his bark. Ukraine's President Zelensky now says that Ukraine will be prepared to cede territory in exchange for NATO membership. NATO apparently agrees, but he won't make any decisions until Trump is back in the White House, and Putin may not be interested anyway. Many people think that a rapid...
There was an article in the Financial Times from a Russian oligarch who is saying that Putin might reject, or seems that, this Russian tycoon said that Putin is going to reject Trump's peace plan. Oh, God. Kellogg. Mr. Kellogg. Anyway.
Retreat may provoke Putin and is the safest way back from the brink.
We've watched from the United States as the Biden administration has driven the U.S. ever closer to a nuclear conflict with Russia, the country that possesses the world's largest nuclear arsenal. It has accelerated ever since.
Just say you like Putin and you want him to have land, you slimy, miserable, invertebrate fuck. Stop saying this. Like, how many times have we said, oh, the line's been crossed regarding nuclear weapons? Like, they don't do it. Because everyone knows that you can't live in a world where a country just goes next to the button and says, excuse me, if you don't give me this thing, I'm gonna. Because as soon as you give them the thing, they're like, wait a minute. Wait, what? Okay. Hey, I want one more thing. If you don't give it to me, I'm gonna. And then you're like, oh shit, I don't want to get nuked. Okay, give him that thing. And they're like, oh, thanks. Okay, cool. Chill. Wait a minute. Wait. Sorry. Hang on a minute. I want a third thing. Like, do you see how this ends? Like, that's not how you let people behave in the world stage. It's not reasonable. Fuck you.
And it's reached its apogee so far in the weeks after.
Why is he the exact same color as the building behind him?
Trump's election. He's now the president-elect. In that time, just a few weeks ago, the Biden administration...
I know, people don't understand this argument, okay? Because you're not British, okay? It's because you didn't grow up with Churchill's big, fat, fucking dumpling face telling you that appeasement doesn't work with people who take. No one told you Americans when you were pledging allegiance and all this shit. No one ever told you that we were alone. For 2 years. If necessary, alone. You guys don't know that.
American military personnel launched missiles into mainland Russia and killed at least a dozen Russian soldiers. So we are, unbeknownst to most Americans, in a hot war with Russia, an undeclared war, a war you did not vote for and that most Americans don't want, but that is ongoing.
Well, joining me to debate all this is the author of Provoked, How Washington Started the New Cold War with Russia and the Catastrophe in Ukraine, Scott Horton, the former Navy SEAL who killed Osama bin Laden, Rob O'Neill, host of the founder of the...
Shit. Not everyone can say that.
Horton, the former Navy...
Do you think this guy like goes up to people in pubs, in a dive bar in the middle of nowhere, and just goes, he's having a bad night, and he's like, there's a guy next to him, he's just like, hey, listen here, son. You ever killed a man with your bare hands? Oh, yeah? Oh, okay. You ever killed Osama bin Laden with your bare hand?
Navy SEAL who killed Osama bin Laden, Rob O'Neill, the host of the founder of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, and Ukrainian streamer and YouTuber, Ukrainian Anna. Welcome to all of you here. Let me start with you, Ukrainian Anna. First time we've had you on Uncensored, so welcome to you. I watched the interview with President Zelensky at the weekend, and I went to Kyiv 4 months after the war began and interviewed him and the First Lady. And he was resolute then that Ukraine would not cede an inch of territory to Vladimir Putin. And that was certainly the mood of all the people. And yet here we are, just over 2 years later, and there's no doubt that he is now countenancing the idea that Ukraine would cede the territory that's been taken by Putin in return for membership of NATO for the rest of Ukraine. What did you think of that interview that he gave?
What I think about it is there are certain realities that we have to contend with as people, and many people in Ukraine are of the opinion that Trump will, when he becomes president, push Ukraine to basically some sort of concession. And our job is now to somehow figure out how do we guarantee our security in the future and how we prevent Russia from attacking us again, which is something that most people think NATO membership is, because Russia is not in the business of attacking NATO countries. It's in the business of attacking Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, countries that are outside.
Lonerbox, other people on his team said he didn't kill Osama and he was the last one in the room. Listen, that might be true, okay? But the people in the dive bar don't know that, okay?
Of NATO's protection. So yeah, most people in Ukraine obviously don't want to cede anything because we know what happens in those occupied territories, and so does UN and many other organizations that gave their nod to the acknowledgement that there is a systematic torture, rape, abuse, deportations of Ukrainians, prohibition of Ukrainian language, culture, and all sorts of horrible things. And of course, nobody wants to abandon our people to that sort of fate. But also, you have to kind of content with what our allies want and what is their decisions. So I believe in that sense that Zelensky is doing exactly that. He's acknowledging the reality of Trump's presidency and what will happen. So I think we should also, wait and see what exactly Trump will do, because his plan has been discussed, but we don't know really much details so far. So yeah, I wouldn't jump into conclusions right now.
No, I think that's right. And I think that, I mean, I'll bring Scott Horton in here. Scott, the thing about Trump is he is unpredictable. We don't know. I talked to him last week about this. We don't know exactly what Trump's going to do. People keep trying to say this is what he'll definitely do. He'll give Putin everything he wants and so on. I don't think that's going to happen. But in terms of this deal that Zelensky seemed to be putting forward, where Putin would keep the land that he's taken, but that the rest of Ukraine would come under the NATO umbrella. Do you think that's something that Putin would even consider as part of a peace settlement?
Oh, I really don't know. I certainly doubt that he's willing to accept anything that would include even rump, what's left of Ukraine joining the NATO alliance. I certainly hope that Trump would not entertain that. That's what this has been largely about, of course, along with the contest over who controls what territory inside the country, is preventing exactly that conclusion. I think it's a real dilemma because the Ukrainians, it's not just that Trump has won an election on repudiating Biden's policy and seeking peace here.
That's exactly why Trump won. He repudiated foreign policy. Is that what we're going to do? Are we going to do the Russian simp version of the Gaza argument? Americans, you think okay, sorry.
It's quite frankly that the Ukrainians are just in no position whatsoever to reverse Russia's gains on the ground. Even the Biden administration admits that now. The Post, the Times, and the Journal all quote military experts saying that truly is the case. So, in other words, Kiev and DC are in a position of weakness. And all Trump really has to threaten is more weapons sales and increased weapon shipments. But Biden already tried that. That didn't make the difference. And so I think what's going to happen is the Russians are going to keep probably all 4 of those eastern and southern provinces there.
Wow.
Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, and hopefully will not demand Kharkiv or Odessa. We can, stop it there. And the the Trump administration is going to have to get their messaging straight that this truly is a betrayal, and they admit it, but that it's Biden's betrayal. Biden made
Ukraine get to keep Kursk. Yeah, what?
This country and these people promises he
No,
could
that's unacceptable. What are you talking about?
Possibly keep. We're going to help you force the Russians all the way out and all of these things. And all they've done is gotten a bunch of people killed, and then they lost anyway. And it's a real tragedy, but it's not Trump's fault. Trump has to be able to have the political capital in this country.
You realize that without American help, like Russia could very well have had Kyiv and even more territory. What are you talking about?
Country to say that, look, it is ugly. But you know what, Piers? He actually, and I don't know how he did this, he got Zalmay Khalilzad, the card-carrying neoconservative Straussian, to sign a deal with the Taliban to get us out of there. And yes, Biden absolutely botched the withdrawal. I could go on for an hour about that. But Trump was willing to say, you know what? We lost. We're not keeping the Taliban out, and we're going to stop trying now. And Biden, it was really the best thing Biden ever did in his life was agree with that, even though he botched the process of the withdrawal. And so it's the same kind of thing here. It is a real tragedy what the Biden administration has gotten the country of Ukraine into here.
Cenk, I mean, look, every part of me is like, I don't want to give a Russian dictator who
gave up 5,000 Taliban prisoners who were fighters back to them from that was Trump, wasn't it? Who excluded the Afghan government from the talks and weakened their position. Oh God.
Legally, in my view, invaded a sovereign democratic European country that's been independent since the mid-90s. I don't want to give him an inch of that land that he's stolen
Piers,
with his murderous rampage.
Like Piers is retarded, but he knows, okay? Because he's a Churchill fan. That's it. We're immune to this logic, okay? This weird British whatever. You can't get into office and make these kinds of arguments in the United Kingdom. Farage almost did. Nigel Farage almost did. Go a bit too close to the Putin son. And he got absolutely rinsed for it. So,
comes in war, I've got a lot of military in my family. There comes in war a cold, hard reality check, as Anna was alluding to earlier, where we are where we are. We can all be idealistic about what we'd like to happen, but the reality is that it is highly unlikely. Now, I think that Ukraine, without a massive extra support from the likes of America, which is simply not going to come, that it is a case of Putin will probably be able to keep what he's taken. Is that your assessment? And is that right for the world that we give him this big win, which is effectively how he will portray it?
Yeah, that is my assessment. And so the reality on the ground is that when Trump won, we lost about 20% of Ukraine. Now, there's a good argument to be made that you had already lost that 20% of Ukraine and you were never going to get it back because of the military realities on the ground. So, you know, this has been a very, very difficult question because the U.S. did push Russia too much. We did push NATO to its borders when we said we wouldn't. I understand all that. But at the end of the day, the Russians invaded. And it's not an anti-war position to start a war. So Putin is definitely guilty.
When he's saying we said we wouldn't, that's not true. He's talking about the 1 inch eastward quote from Baker made to the Russians in the early 90s. But it's not true. That 1 inch eastward they're talking about is in reference to military installations in East Germany, like post-Cold War East Germany, post-unification. And it's actually something that they upheld. They honored that commitment. Gorbachev himself admits this, by the way. He's not happy with it, but he admits that they didn't talk about Warsaw Pact countries falling and not being, and the Soviet Union collapsing. That's not really where they were at this point. And NATO going in there. They weren't talking about that. But yeah, it's all public. You can read it. You can even read Gorbachev talking about it. Where is it? Not 1 inch eastward and what it really meant. Did NATO make a binding promise to refrain from an eastward enlargement only to make a clandestine volte-face? After the fall of the Berlin Wall, German and Soviet leaders had to confront a number of complex problems, including what would happen to the 380,000 Red Army soldiers stationed in East Germany, GDR, and when and how the USSR would give up its Allied reserved rights over Germany. Moscow agreed to withdraw its troops, relinquish its rights as the World War II victor power. As part of the negotiation, unified Germany gained sovereignty. It was free to choose its alliance affiliation, which resulted in it remaining a NATO member, even though it had grown in size. The talks were never, in 1990, were never about NATO expansion into Eastern Europe. They were confined to the specific issue of NATO's defense in the wake of German unification. And the two issues should not be conflated. It is also important to remember that the Warsaw Pact was still in existence during these talks, so NATO enlargement was a moot point. Because Warsaw Pact... They were talking about this when the Warsaw Pact was still in place. So they're talking about NATO movement east when they're reunifying Germany. Why would they be talking about Warsaw Pact countries or the Soviet Union when it's still there? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and Gorbachev was aware of this. Later, him and Yeltsin would appeal to, quote, the spirit of the deal. But when you're appealing to the spirit of the deal, you're not appealing to the deal. Anyway.
On top of that, 12,000 civilians killed. Add on top of that, 20,000 Ukrainian children kidnapped. But what's the answer? Is the answer to fight for the next 10 years, 20 years? Is the answer to cede ground to Putin? Well, that's also super dangerous. That's why this is an unsolvable riddle, because you can get to peace now by doing what Trump is likely going to do, which is Russia take 20% of it, and Ukraine will not join NATO. But the next time Russia thinks about invading a country, they're going to think, well,
Who's here? Hello.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I can't with Chankman. It's saying that this is an unsolvable riddle when, like, clearly there's such, like, clear fucking solutions that any fucking country could take to actually solve this fucking war. It's actually pissing me the fuck off. This is so fucking horrible. Why would anybody even say this shit?
I think it's because Cenk is a populist and he needs to find a way to blame the institutions and the West he needs to blame them for something, right? He needs to be part of that story somehow. He can't just do Cenk's entire persona and what he's selling to his audience can never be American military industrial complex, arm Ukraine to help them against the threatening East. That's not going to work. He can't do it. He's allergic to it, even if he seems to obviously be morally conflicted.
Dude, but he clearly was really pro-Ukrainian in the beginning, and now all of a sudden he decided to be the same as every other fucking right-winger about this. I have a really strong feeling he's going through his Tenet Media arc. This is I don't think this is an actual, I don't know, natural opinion of his.
Yeah, it's that's I imagine what it is him trying to reconcile his instincts and his independent thoughts with what he's supposed to be as a populist. I don't know. It's confusing. I think he's about as confused as he is confusing when he talks. Honestly, I don't know.
There's been also talks, for example, France wants to put boots on the ground, for real. They've been considering that. And it's you hear this from literally a whole fucking country willing to actually go to war, and then these people saying, "Oh, I don't know how we can solve this. This seems like an unsolvable riddle." Actually, this is actually the West's fault for I don't know, taking former Soviet countries into the defensive fucking alliance, bro. Are you fucking serious?
Yeah, but you can tell that we've it's affected the American resolve as well, right? Because I think when politicians, when Biden spent the last couple of years saying, don't launch long-range missiles into Russia, even if they're targeting military installations, I don't think he did that out of any kind of military advice or any kind of political necessity. He did it because people were pushing that way, because there was that large enough camp in the country that was going to be massively outraged at giving too much support to Ukraine. Even though you can look at the data as well. It's American military spending as a percentage of GDP, I think is lower now than it's ever been. I think it's 2 or 3% of GDP.
Yeah,
compared to all-time percentage of federal budget as well. It used to be in the double digits or 20 or 30 sometimes. So yeah, it's just America's kind of, I think they're...
It's from what I learned from Epic Fail is that they will not lower it and they will not increase the defense spending in the US because the House is just not for any change for the defense spending, which is I suppose a blessing and a curse at the same time. But as for Ukraine, there's easy ways to deal with this war by literally just increasing military support for Ukraine. That's one or the also probably the only viable solution for this if you don't want to put boots on the ground. That's 100% sure, especially because every dollar spent in military assets that goes to Ukraine is way cheaper than gearing and arming up the entirety of NATO against Russian aggression. It's an investment. It's literally an investment. This is probably the best thing you can do against Russian aggression in Europe. But nobody wants to hear that.
The only hope is that someone just needs to show Trump this graph and say, look how weak our military is. Okay, we got threats from Iran, Russia. Putin doesn't even like your peace deal. Trump, tiny dick. And then maybe he'll bring us back to World War II levels. I don't know. God.
But the thing is, I don't think his base wants that.
His base wants whatever he wants. I think if Trump won aid and all this tomorrow, I think it would work for most of them. He'd probably lose your Dave Smiths and your whatever other libertarian dipshits.
They would be complaining about defense spending when they all can't even fucking afford eggs at the store or some shit like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
I don't know.
yeah, he can do whatever he wants, yeah, for sure. He has like his little I don't know, psychotic cultists.
Especially if
in
it makes it
his-
personal, right? I honestly think the fact that like Iran is so aggressive towards America and Trump, I think if he wants to get involved
Yeah,
more aggressively in foreign policy, he will be able to ride that quite well. Yeah.
Iran could be razed to the ground in like probably a week by current US like assets. He doesn't need to increase military spending for that. Iran is probably like the least fucking worries of the US, honestly. It's like I think the main worry is just Taiwan. Ukraine is probably not. It's more of a worry for Europe than it is for the US, but Taiwan is a way bigger worry for the US than anything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, Trump hates China, doesn't he? That is one foreign policy area
Well,
that he's
who
willing to.
knows? He might like say, okay, you can have Taiwan, but we want a deal for your, I don't know, semiconductors or some shit
Yeah,
like
I mean
that.
that's a problem because I think he even said to Taiwan that they need to increase their fucking defense spending by orders of magnitude to keep American support
Yeah.
and making all these unreasonable demands. Even though for the whole time he's been like hating China and yeah, I don't know. It's just it's annoying because I just don't know. I feel like he could
We don't
literally go
know, yeah,
anyway. He could go anyway.
It's actually like it's fucking with absolutely everything. It's fucking with the economy because nobody fucking knows which way this is gonna go, and like it's gonna have like his inauguration, just his inauguration, even like his election is gonna fuck with like the stock market so fucking hard. So many people are gonna lose so much fucking money.
Based.
But,
Some
yeah.
people are gonna make a lot of money though.
Well, no, you don't actually know what's gonna happen unless you're an insider. So like,
I don't know, just short some things that you think. I don't know. It's all luck. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to this. All right.
All right, see ya.
Take care. Bye bye. Chat, does Lonerbox have an essay debunking Mearsheimer? That is my most recent video essay. Yes.
We went into Georgia and took a chunk. We went into Crimea, took it all. When it was part of Ukraine, we went into Ukraine again. We took 20% of it. It turns out aggression is rewarded, and Netanyahu's watching, and he's going to take a part of Gaza, and China's watching, and they've got the Uyghurs in the detention camps and the re-education camps, and the Russians have the Ukrainian children in the re-education camps.
Uh-oh.
So this is really, really dangerous for the world, no matter how it's resolved.
Yeah, Rob O'Neill, you've been at the sharp end of some of the worst conflicts, wars of the last 25 years. Once again, thank you very much for your extraordinary service, not least in killing bin Laden. What is your overview of where we are here? Trump coming in, obviously, is going to change the dynamic. He proved in his first term he's not a warmonger. He thinks war, apart from anything else, is just terrible business, that it costs a fortune, the rewards are very low. The other side of that coin is, do you let a Russian dictator run in?
What are you trying to super chat, Angry Viking? I don't see anything in your... What? I can see about 20 donations from Dwayne. Thank you very much. Mooting box. I don't know what that means. Thank you. Barney Green. Thank you. Churchill Impressions, $5. Thank you. Shmuel, thanks for the $10. And Dugan Nash, thanks for the 5. Make bar go up. Drew. Jesse Irwin, thanks for the 10 Canadian. Hassan. Oh, not Hassan. What? He did a thing? He said yesterday that Israel attacks Arab oil nations on behalf of the US to keep them in line. Where is that coming from? When has Israel gone to war with a petrostate for the US? Am I crazy? Yeah, you are. Hassan knows. And you know that he knows, right? Because he's Turkish. And that means that you know everything about the Middle East. What? I'm pretty sure Hassan believes the USS Liberty was deliberately sunk by the Israelis, no? Yeah, whatever. I don't care.
Into a European country, take what he wants and just let him have it. What's your view?
Well, unfortunately, we're in a position where it doesn't matter why we got here. We're just here. And Cenk was mentioning Georgia and Crimea and an invasion of Ukraine. That's all weak leadership on the United States. And unfortunately, when we have a strong United States, we have a more stable world most of the time. I mean, we did invade Iraq, and I disagree with that, even though I went there. But you're going to have to go to a position of negotiation.
Oh, why can't I see this super chat? Remember, Cenk denied the Armenian genocide and simped for the Grey Wolves. He's not anti-fascist. He's not anti-genocide. He's on the other team. Okay. Unless he changed his mind. Why can't I see that super chat? What's going on? Huh? Why isn't that showing up on my history? Oh. Skill issue.
I mean, we did say we weren't going to push in NATO further east, and we did. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. We were moving there, and now Ukraine wants to be a part of NATO. And you know, it's Russia doesn't want that. And you're dealing with big countries, but you're also dealing with big egos. And Vladimir Putin grew up in a part of Russia where part of the fun was chasing rats with sticks, and he found out what it was like to corner a rat, and that's kind of where he is right now. He's been in charge of Russia since the early 90s, let's be honest, and he wants to save face with his people.
Yeah.
Are you looking for Angry Vikings super chat?
I found it now, yeah.
Okay, never mind. Bye.
Lowering the conscription age to get people in there to fight. It's like he's not going to back out, but you can't let him take more. And I'm by no means defending him, but I also think that Volodymyr Zelensky is a puppet, and he's laundering money just like most of the people in Washington and Ukraine. That's why the whole argument in Ukraine is how much money people can personally make in Ukraine. I hopefully think that Donald Trump brings a big stick. Also, he doesn't care about embezzling money like the United States is now, and whatever they're doing. But it's not a good situation. But we definitely need to turn. We need alliance solidarity, which we lost by leaving Afghanistan the way we did, and a forward defense. Right now, our Navy, which is the epitome of our forward defense, is under the Biden administration is worrying about getting more transgender bathrooms and getting green ships, even though they're all nuclear, which is green. It's just there needs to be some adults in the room and talk reality. Because
what the fuck was that last sentence? Again, Trump was okay with trans people in bathrooms. Hang on. Back in 2016.
North Carolina did something that was very strong, and they're paying a big price, and there's a lot of problems. And I heard one of the best answers I heard was from a commentator yesterday saying, leave it the way it is right now. There have been very few problems. Leave it the way it is. North Carolina, what they're going through with all of the business that's leaving and all of the strife, and that's on both sides. You leave it the way it is. There have been very few complaints the way it is. People go, they use the bathroom that they feel is appropriate. There has been so little trouble.
So if Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses?
That is correct.
You know what? It's funny that if Trump was like a woke politician, he'd be a really good woke politician. That is probably that and his response to Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death are the only two times I've ever seen him talking like a fairly normal person.
Well, here's where we are, and someone needs to come to the table and talk to someone else, not worried about how much jewelry Mrs. Zelensky could buy in New York on the taxpayer's dime.
Right. And how popular is Volodymyr Zelensky now with Ukrainian people, do you think?
I'd say pretty popular still. Most people consider him a pretty good representative of Ukrainian people and what we want. And pretty disheartening, I'd say, to hear what people say here, but I'm used to it. Surprisingly, Cenk, I agree with in the sense that we can't allow Russia to continue get away with what they're doing, because that's what they have been doing, in particular with annexation of Georgian territory and Moldova and Ukraine in 14, and now in 22 full-scale invasion. And nothing stops them then from fully invading Moldova or Georgia. They are already doing all they can to select people there as presidents and meddle in their elections quite strongly already. And if they can't do it with just hybrid methods of sabotaging the elections and making people basically, install their puppets there. Then they do, well, sort of like a blackmail. Then they do threats, and then they do annexation, invasion, terror, death, and all what that we are having right now in Ukraine. And that's not.
Anna, how would you describe?
Biden.
Anna, how would you describe the mood of the Ukrainian people? When I was there, like I say, 2 years ago, to a man and woman, whatever age that I met, there was this steely resolve of we've got to win this at all costs. But the cost has been enormous. So many cities just destroyed, so many people killed, all these children being taken and so on. Is there a mood now in the country?
She can equip this really fast. She just needs to say what was the cost of Russia winning? What was the cost of Russia not facing pushback and actually making it to Kyiv, and maybe even making it farther west, and then being emboldened to go farther into other countries? What's the cost of losing? There's a cost of losing. I don't know why my fellow admirer of Churchill here thinks that it just stops at a certain red line in the sand. Because you gave up.
That they just want peace, just want a deal, even if it means surrendering the territory that's been taken?
Oh, God, fuck. Anna should have spoken to me before going on this. Because if she doesn't bring up Churchill, okay, she's missed a golden opportunity.
Well, nobody wants peace more than us. I live in a city that is bombed every day. My father has been killed. So, of course, we want peace. But that depends on what that peace is. Because nobody wants peace without any sort of justice, right? And that is the problem. Because we have to consider our now, obviously, right? Even if the fire stops. So let's say my city stops being bombed every day. That's a bonus for me, obviously, right? And for my family and for my friends. But how important is that bonus? Because it's a temporarily bonus. We have to think about the future, that other people, other generations are not going to go through exact same things we went through. And that's quite important to most Ukrainians. But the mood, of course, have been solid. As you said,
that line's too woke. No justice, no peace. I thought that was that's not going to work on Piers Morgan. Okay, you need to get Churchill. You don't want woke. Okay, you don't want no justice, no peace. You want Edwardian, racist, imperialist, top hats, cigars, sexism on the casual. That's what you want.
People were more enthusiastic before, specifically because of the, I would say, lack of care and lack of commitment from our allies, particularly the incredible amount of limitations on our long-range strikes. For example, as you know, UK actually gave us the long-range missiles, Storm Shadows, I believe they're called, and we couldn't really use them because of the limitations that were given to us, primarily by United States and by Biden, by the way, himself, his administration at least. So in that sense, there has been a sort of demoralizing effect, of course, because of the lack of aid, inconsistent aid from both the United States and also European countries as well. And it's hard to sustain that sort of like, I'd say, hopefulness and will when you are not confident that you will have means to fight with properly.
Yes.
And that, I would say, dampened the mood.
Yeah, I understand that. Scott, a lot of people have come on this show since this war started, and they've made the argument, which I know that you subscribe to, which is effectively the West and Ukraine goaded Russia into doing this by continually pushing for NATO membership, for NATO encroachment and so on, as the Russians saw it. There's another school of thought that this could have been resolved diplomatically, that actually, yeah, you can take that argument, you can see there's merit to that argument, certainly to a degree, but it doesn't justify launching a full invasion of your neighbouring country. Would you accept that the invasion itself didn't actually have to happen?
Yes, I have a whole section in my book about all of Putin's different options that he could have
he really wants you to know about his book, doesn't he? He's got it here. He's got it here. Why does he have two of the same book? Why is he... Oh, there as well. There's another... That's a picture of a framed picture of the book. I never knew there was that hack. Can I just read one book and get 100 copies of it and slam it on my bookshelf? Can I do that?
The book is not called Justified, why Russia had to do what they had to do. It's called Provoked, how Washington started the new Cold War with Russia and the catastrophe in Ukraine, because the book is 700 pages of all of this going back to the end of the last Cold War. And with all due respect to the guy that shot bin Laden in the head, thank you. And with all due respect to this young woman whose poor country is being bombed to death.
Now, it turns out that apparently no one else who was there agrees that this guy shot bin Laden in the head. Is that right? He should have spoken about the single spacing and the citations. We'd have a Finkelstein going on.
And their opinions here. It's just not the case that what we have is a simple case of a Hitlerian, Putin-led Russia running roughshod and rampage. And the only thing to stop them is when tough, good guys like us stand up to a bully like him. For example, in a war that they both cited numerous times here today, the Georgia war was begun by the American sock puppet, Saakashvili. He launched that war and killed Russian peacekeepers in his initial assault. And they lied about that, led by John McCain during the campaign at the time in 2008. But even the New York Times later admitted that, yeah, it was true, that was how that war started. And
so just to be clear, the official narrative that's not from this guy's book is that there was an attempted coup, wasn't there, against the democratically elected president? And then Russians got involved. So
It was and part of his motivation to do that was that Bush, a few months before, had given him sort of a pseudo membership action plan for joining NATO. But you can't join NATO if you don't have settled borders. And Georgia had these two breakaway provinces under Russian protection. And so he was trying to reincorporate them so he would have
Remember, breakaway provinces that were broken away by Russia, like Abkhazia and South Ossetia are not majority ethnic Russian. They can't even make that argument for those areas, right? They just had enough gooners in them. Anyway.
Settled border so he could join America's military alliance, which completely blew up in his face and got a bunch of people killed. But that's just not the same thing as Putin wakes up every day scheming on how he can conquer Poland, and only America's threat of ultimate...
This is the thing. Oh my God, it's the schizophrenia. This is how I feel when Western leftists try to talk about Hamas. It's like, they're telling me one thing, but I can just go and watch Hamas guys talk and they say something different. This guy is trying to tell me what Putin thinks and what motivates him. But you can literally have Tucker Carlson desperately trying to get Putin to talk about NATO expansion and how he was so provoked and try to apply all of these Mearsheimer realist perspectives. And Putin just goes, yeah, but let me tell you about Oleg the Wise. Let me tell you what happened after Oleg the Wise, okay? Let me tell you about the next 1,000 years. But do you not feel threatened by the NATO expansionism? Yeah, but tell you about the Russian Empire, okay? You know the little Russian dolls and the eggs? Let me tell you about the eggs. Let me tell you about the Fabergés, the Fabergé eggs with the jewels on it. Why'd Ukraine say no to this shit?
H-bomb annihilation is holding him at bay. It's just really not like that. It's much more complicated than that. And, again, back to your original question, it's not to say that he's justified in what he's done, but it's like if you get in a bar fight and you're shoving a guy with a knife in his pocket and he stabs you, that doesn't justify, you shoving him doesn't justify him stabbing you, but also you were shoving a guy with a knife in his pocket and don't
pretend. The analogy here for shoving Russia is countries that are not Russia asking to join a defensive alliance that does not attack Russia. Like, okay.
And like he just woke up this morning looking to pick a fight with you. And one more thing here, a great example, and then I'll leave it, is the status quo in Crimea held from 1991 all the way through 2014.
Yeah, it's a status quo that helped Russia. It's a status quo that was notoriously corrupt, that provided no justice or restitution for the returning Tatar population who had been ethnically cleansed by Stalin. It was a notoriously corrupt economy where basically it was a hub for Russian businessmen to fuck about with land and trade under the counter and to go there for fucking holidays and gambling and everything else. Yeah, it was that status quo was great. It was a status quo that helped Russia. It was good for Russian money. It was good for Russian media and propaganda because they could just broadcast Russian propaganda to the Russian-speaking population of Crimea. That's not good status quo.
What changed was that, and there was a controversy over it. It's an extremely important Russian naval base there at Sevastopol and the rest of this. It was in controversy since independence, but the status quo held until the Barack Obama government overthrew the government of Ukraine for the second time in 10 years. And then the new regime immediately threatened to...
She was there. It must be so fucking maddening to hear that as someone who, because she was there. She was one of the early Maidan protesters. Before they were, I'm pretty sure they were on, like, because I don't think they were popular to begin with. They started off as a student movement. She told me this because of the nonviolence panel. No Obama check.
Repeal and abolish the Kharkiv Pact, the agreement by which Russia was allowed to stay at Sevastopol. And it was only then that they seized the Crimean Peninsula. So it's not to say that, oh, it was perfectly justified for them to do so, but it is to say that it was Barack Obama and Joe Biden who picked that fight, and then it was Putin who finished it. And then this is a big part of the reason why the war in the East broke out.
If you guys don't know what he's talking about here, Anna was the sniper. Well, I would know. Okay, let me tell you guys something about sniping. You think this guy? You think Dr. fucking Frankenstein over here knows about the difference between a sniper and a marksman? Hell no. Anyway, if you guys want to know what was actually happening, Ukraine was basically under a Russian puppet leader, president, and that president did actually agree to align Ukraine with the European customs arrangement. This was what Ukrainians wanted at the time. They wanted to lean economically towards Europe. What's the difference? What, between sniping and marksman? So they're usually, by lay people, they're used interchangeably. But if you're like in more traditional terms, like a sniper is someone who's like fairly much more long range, like they're farther away. They usually have a spotter. They're usually taking a lot more time to carry out their operations, maybe even days. A marksman is someone who's going to be much closer. They're usually like supporting infantry units, and they might be like maybe less than 100 meters away from their targets. And then if there's an infantry operation going on, then a marksman will be behind them, and they might be, you know, finding people who are going in to reinforce, or they'll be catching people running past windows and shit like that. Yeah. So one of them is like a lot more active combat, whereas the other is a lot more careful, measured. That's not the difference. All right, show me something that shows otherwise. Eek. That's what I read on the fucking American military website. I'm just kidding. Hey, got him. Okay. Woo. So Ukraine wanted to join the European customs arrangement because they realized that every country in Europe that basically leaned towards Europe started to do better over the last, since the mid-90s, started to do better than the ones that were more aligned with the Russian Eurasian customs arrangement. So I think Ukraine's parliament, an overwhelming majority of them vote for the European customs arrangement. And Putin's mad. Putin doesn't like that. He wants people to go in line with the Russian economic deal and the Russian economic alliance. So Yanukovych promises to do this European deal, which would effectively negate the Russian one and not allow it to go through. And people get really big mad. They start protesting. I think at one point, Putin offers a deal that, what was it described as? I think one of the Ukrainian politicians said that that what they basically said, that what they basically saw was free cheese. And the only place where there's free cheese is a mousetrap, because this Russian deal was basically something that lowered the Russian cost, the cost of Russian gas and fuel imports to Ukraine. But it also had a little clause that said, we are able to change this whenever we want. Like every 3 months, we review it and we can just change it right back. And also a loan of like 15 billion. So the full terms were never public. The European terms were. They were better. So Ukraine wanted to join the European one. They start protesting. Those protests initially not very popular, but they become more popular, especially after the aggression from the Ukrainian police. And then Yanukovych gets really mad and eventually ends up shooting protesters. He gets the cops to shoot on protesters. And then the protest gets massively, massively popular. There's fighting on both sides. There's like 100-something people dead. And it ends with Yanukovych fleeing the country. He first of all flies to Kharkiv and then he goes to Russia. What was left behind was his presidential palace, which was funded and beefed up by years of corruption and stealing fucking government money. But apparently, at some point, because the Americans had a preference for the leader of the opposition after Yanukovych to lead the interim government, and they were found on a phone call saying, yeah, I think the leader of the opposition, like the second guy who we'd expect to come in after the main party fucks off, we like him, and this idiot thinks that like is evidence of a coup, of an American-backed coup. So basically, all right.
Immediately was because when the dissenters seized buildings in the east, and including with some Russian help, just like the Westerners helped the Maidan, they declared war against them. They overreacted at John Brennan's behest. We know this, it was reported in Forbes. John Brennan went there on April 12th. They launched the war on the 14th. And the reason that they did that was because the coup had already blown up in their face in the loss of Crimea. Right. So they weren't about to tolerate this kind of dissent propaganda? In the East. It's not Russian propaganda. I'm a Texan. I don't even read Russian or know what the Russians say about this stuff.
That's actually quite okay. He admits it. Yeah, this isn't. Yeah, Anna's actually right. This isn't actually Russian propaganda. This is Western propaganda that Russians like. Oh God, that Russians will conveniently agree with when it suits them. Oh God, yeah, that's so obvious. Yeah, he doesn't know anything about what Russians say, because if you listen to anything Putin says or anything the Russian media says, yeah, you wouldn't think that this has anything to do with provocation or NATO or anything. Yeah, fuck me. Okay. Slava from the Texas Oblast.
Oh,
this
sure,
is the history of the world.
I speak Russian. That's my...
That's
yes.
fine. Listen,
can I please interject with that?
Well, let me just say right here. Anytime anyone contradicts the party line on this, that's all anyone ever says is that this is Russian propaganda. Oh, no, but that's just a bunch of crap. Because it is. They're plagiarizing me.
You repeated it in
and
English.
I'm just speaking the truth.
Are you getting money or not? I'm just wondering,
you know. Lady.
At least they pay you.
See, that really is all you have, because you can't contradict any of my facts, so you have to come up with this nonsense. I can contradict
everything you said. I participated in Maidan.
No one in America cares about Russia at all, lady. Nobody in America cares about Russia. Back in the days of communism, there were communists that did.
Can I please have a word? This person spoke quite a bit. We gave him a rooper to repeat Russian talking points and lies, blatant lies. So, you know,
okay, well, Scott, let Anna just respond to what you were saying, Scott. I'm interested to hear her response.
A lot of bullshit was said, so it's kind of difficult to counter everything. Basically, it was not a coup. It was a revolution that millions of people participated in. The reason we participated, me included, I was 19 back in the day, it was because we had severe problems with corruption and a tyrannical puppet of Russia, Yanukovych, who refused to make a treaty with the European Union, which is what most of the people in Ukraine wanted, 60-something%, and especially younger people wanted to move away from Russian control, from Russians owning every single business industry in my country, and to have some sort of like laws and order, and also have some sort of democracy and liberty that is what something people have in the West, and that's something that we did not have. So that was about, a revolution was about that, about students going and protesting and getting beaten up, and Yanukovych then going to Russia to essentially ask Putin, his buddy, how can he stop the protesters, which he then made dictator laws that prohibited people to effectively protest.
He did. They banned protesting. They made it illegal to protest. They also offered amnesty to citizens who would commit crimes against protesters. I forgot that. Oh shit, they did that. That was a thing. That's mental.
At all in this country.
I think it was like public congregations of more than, was it 10 or 15 people? Yeah, God, wild.
So we didn't appreciate that, and we went, literally millions of people participated in Maidan. That is not a coup. That is not something you buy for Obama or Nuland cookies. I'm sorry to say, never received a single cookie yet. It's been a long time. And yeah, all of that, when going to Georgia is a whole other thing, but that's just what Russia does. It creates unrest. It supports militias in the countries, and then it basically floods them with weapons, and it also applies its own soldiers to annex territory by the guise of protecting Russian speakers or any of that. Scott is a master, I believe Scott is the name, right? Here, but I am a Russian speaker from Eastern Ukraine. It's about as east as it gets in Kharkiv, and I didn't require their protection. I was never prosecuted. What they did is that they attacked us under the guise of protecting Russian speakers that was never prosecuted in this country, because half of us literally are Russian speakers. We have been Russified back in the day by Russian Empire. So yeah, this war is about not about you. I'm sad to say some things are not about America. This war is about our very long time, centuries-long oppressor trying to thrust us back under their control. And we didn't want that. People in Georgia don't want that, if you can see it by now, currently, by the revolution and the protests going on in the country, exactly for the same reason, because their corrupt Russian puppet government refused the people's will to be part of Europe. So it was never about NATO, because we never discussed joining NATO until Russian invasion. It was never even a conversation in Ukraine about joining NATO. So thanks for the lies, obviously. Also, yeah, they do have borders with NATO right now, and they had them before. Now it's even bigger. It doubled because Finland, in fear of Russia, joined NATO. That's why people join NATO, because they want protection from Russian aggression.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. Rob, you've been waiting.
Actual fucking based. Okay. Based. Okay, sorry. Damn. Did I get a phone call from someone giving me the nuclear codes to the base department? Okay.
Patiently. It's interesting. I mean, I find with these debates, I learn a lot, but I'm not entirely sure where the truth lies, having just heard two very different versions of the history here.
I don't know what to do. He wouldn't have said that if she had invoked Churchill, okay? He would not have questioned the factual integrity. He wouldn't have questioned that one iota if she had invoked Churchill. Damn.
What would you like to say?
Well, I mean, what I like to say is obviously Anna has more experience than me. She lives there. She's lost family members. And having seen war firsthand, I know that most people don't want to be at war. Most people are trying to get on with their lives. And unfortunately, there are bad people that force this stuff. And my heart goes out to them, too. And I'm definitely going to buy Scott's book after this. I'm actually sitting here on this panel learning a lot. And I'm open-minded about stuff because I used to be, America, apple pie, and we're the greatest in the world. But I've seen stuff that we've done. Sitting here in the United States, having worked in D.C. and living in New York, I just don't like my taxpayer dollars going over to a place where people are funneling it into their own pockets and threatening a nuclear war, because it doesn't matter who does it. If one nuke gets launched, if it's India to Pakistan or Israel to somewhere else, or the United States decides, the only country, by the way, to ever drop a nuclear weapon on another country, if that happens again, we're going to go into a thing called nuclear winter. You're not.
Hey, World War III, nuclear winter. Hey, let's go. I love it. This guy is simulated. He's played the game where you simulate nuclear winter and you run around and try to survive 3 times to prepare for this debate.
You're going to want to die in the blast. You're not going to want to die doing that. My interest is in getting corrupt politics out. Well, first here, hopefully it starts in January, and then maybe it can spread somewhere else. You're never going to get rid of corrupt politicians, because narcissists are they just go there. Washington's full of them. I've been there. I've seen them. Obviously, Vladimir Putin's a horrible person. I don't like Volodymyr Zelensky either. I'm tired of seeing innocent people get killed for other people getting rich, because that's what happens. I'm tired of seeing soldiers who don't want to be there, both Ukrainian and Russia, fighting in trenches like they did in World War I and getting hit with suicide drones, which is the wave of the future, almost to the point where we're going to stop having manned jets because it's a waste of time when legions of drones will be fighting. I hate to see this escalation of force.
Legions of drones. This guy has how many post-apocalyptic video games? Legions of drones. He's a yapper.
See people getting rich everywhere, from the industrial complex to the military, of big pharma, of all that stuff. It's just sad as someone who went somewhere, risked my own life to kill the #1 terrorist in the world, and now wonder if some of the places we went were even worth it, or we're just making people like Dick Cheney rich. So that's why I'm here, and I'm just open-minded. I want to hear what Cenk has to say. Buying the book, love to hear Scott's book, love to hear what Anna's saying, and I'm honest to God just learning stuff here today. So
do you know what? That's such a great, honest answer.
Oh my
Rob. That's why I
God!
love
Fuck you, Piers. Oh God, Piers is he's so suggestible, isn't he? He's so easily manipulated by. It's just like a nothing opinion. It's just like a nothing opinion masquerading as open-mindedness. The point in open-mindedness is you're willing to consider and adapt your worldview to new information, not just that your head is a hole, right? Like a hollow fucking ping pong ball.
having you on Uncensored, because you're an honest guy. And I really appreciate that. I feel the same way. I don't profess to be a great expert here. Cenk, I'm going to come to you in a second. I'm just going to have a quick break to speak to the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, General Wesley Clark. General, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here, Piers. I'm listening to this panel.
Who's this guy?
There's a lot of misinformation.
Ooh.
I was in Ukraine.
Wait. He's in a suit. It's difficult now because everyone says they're combating disinformation. But I think this guy's probably going to be all right. Okay. I think I believe in this man.
On the 31st of March, I went through Maidan. I talked to the people. I looked at the lamppost where Putin's henchmen had killed a bunch of Ukrainians. There were a bunch of bullets still embedded in the lamppost. I followed it very, very closely. I don't know exactly what you want to talk about. If I'd been on your panel, I would probably disagree with most of them. The people in Ukraine are fighting for democracy. NATO didn't push itself to the borders. It was drawn to the borders by the people in Eastern Europe who wanted freedom. They wanted freedom from Russian oppression. That's why NATO expanded in response to them, not because NATO wanted to expand. It's because in order to stabilize, you had to be able to provide investment, and to get investment, people needed security, and they were living in fear of Russia coming back. Now, when did Putin decide to come back? As soon as he became president. In 1999, at the speech he made in the inauguration of President Kuchma in Ukraine. Putin said, Ukraine and Russia, we're more than brothers. We're in each other's souls.
Oh, my God.
Poland sent its national security advisor to see me after that, said, he's trying to restore the Soviet Union. He's coming after us. So this is a long-held ambition by Mr. Putin. And he's seen weakness in the West repeatedly. And that weakness has encouraged him to move. And it's going to continue until the West shows strength. And that strength means providing much more to Ukraine, bringing Ukraine into NATO, and saying to Mr. Putin very directly, look, stop. We're not interested in strategic arms discussions. We're not interested in investing in your economy.
Yeah.
We're not interested in having nice conversations in Switzerland with you until you pull back, return the children, account for the inductees, bring to trial the war criminals that have been indicted in Ukrainian courts, and you owe us close to $1 trillion in destruction of our country. So, Piers, these are very clear lines. This is 1937, 1938.
Oh, yes.
And
He
you would
knows.
have heard the same kind of apologists for Hitler.
See, look, Piers loves it. Piers, Now you got him. He's hooked. He's never going back. Okay? He's going to the front lines. He's already there. He might be dead.
You would have heard them saying the peace in Versailles was unfair and the French and there's corruption and so forth. There's corruption in every government. It's there in your government. It's there in the United States. It's there in Ukraine, but it's never the same as it is in Russia, where organized crime works as an arm of the government connected to the intelligence agencies to assure that Putin and his cronies get what they want. So I think it's a very difficult time. I don't know how the negotiations are going to turn out, but I would tell you this, that Mr. Trump's in a tough position, because if he gives Putin what he wants, he looks weak to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And if he looks weak to the rest of the world, China's going to move. We've got in the United States a window now to do something in the Middle East, and I think Netanyahu probably will ask Mr. Trump to do it and pose a choice for the Iranian regime, either knock off the hegemonial aspirations and shut down this arc of resistance, including the weapons to the Houthis, or face the consequences. With Iran, you have to go to the source. With Russia, you have to stand firm. We've had deterrence in place for 70 years. We have nuclear weapons. Putin doesn't want to use a nuclear weapon. He's afraid of nuclear weapons, but he's using them to threaten.
Yeah.
So people like your bearded guy whose name I didn't get, these are people who are repeating Russian talking points. That's exactly what the woman from Ukraine said. Now, I will tell you that people in Ukraine are suffering, and they would love an end to this conflict. They didn't choose it.
Mr. Khomeini, tear down this tunnel. Oh, shit.
It was forced on them. But the only way it's going to be successfully resolved is by strong U.S. leadership. And Mr. Trump is in a position where no matter what he said about ending the war in 24 hours, he's in a position where he simply cannot and will not concede everything that Putin wants. He won't do it. If he does, you won't make America great again. You'll invite war elsewhere in the world. So I see you brought in the rest of the panel here.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
Well, no, you know what, General? I've interviewed you many times. I've seen you interview many times.
You know what, General? I believe I've changed my position on the entire conflict. Because he heard 1937, 38, and he was like, wait, I know about that.
I've never seen you quite this angry. It feels to me like you're angry about where things have got to.
Well, Piers, I'm angry about hearing the misinformation from some members of your. Okay. Now,
Can I respond, please?
Can I explain something before you talk, please, sir? I was at the beginning of NATO enlargement. I was there.
Listen, sir, can you just take a seat back there, okay? Listen, I know you've seen a lot of war in your little books. I know you've seen a lot of combat on TV. Let me tell you. Sorry.
At the beginning, I talked to foreign leaders. I set up the program as a staff officer in the Pentagon. I was the NATO commander who went to Bulgaria and Romania and Estonia and Latvia. And they told me, we've got to be in NATO. They didn't say, hey, if you want us, okay, I bet you, blah, 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 blah. We said, we don't want you. It's too much of a problem. They said, please, please help us. And so that's exactly what happened. That's how we got there. In 2014, when Putin went into Crimea, the Ukrainians could have stopped it, but they asked the United States, what should we do? And the United States told them, give up Crimea. Why? Because we wanted Putin's cooperation in the Middle East and with Iran to stop Iran's nuclear program. When Putin went further in Donbass, we provided information, but we provided no lethal assistance to Ukraine. For all these years, the United States administration was timid in dealing with Putin. It's like one member of the administration said recently, of the Biden administration said, oh, we never expected nuclear weapons. I mean, ooh. Nuclear weapons have been the foundation for Western security since the end of the Second World War. We've had near confrontations with the Soviets. And because American presidents didn't back down, we didn't have war.
Ooh.
Now, Mr. Trump has put himself in an extremely difficult position. But all of our talk about Ukraine and telling Ukraine in advance, are you going to have to give up your territory? And by the way, you're not going to be a member of NATO. Let's not do any of this right now. Let's put the forces, let's get the forces in Ukraine the weapons and support they need so that the people who have already been mobilized can have these weapons and provide the reserves that are necessary in Ukraine. Let's leave an open-ended commitment for Mr. Trump. Let's tell the Ukrainians, strike to your heart's content in Russia. You get no sanctuary, Mr. Putin. You started this, you pay the price.
Ooh.
And then let's go into the talk with understanding what we want. We want all of Ukraine's land back. We want reparations. We want the children returned. We want the missing people accounted for. And we want the war criminals put on trial.
God.
And then we can talk about sanctions relief. No sanctions relief until the conditions are satisfied. And, it's very hard for democracies to be able to stand up to a man like Putin. He doesn't have to worry about re-election.
God, this guy's taking up so much space. Holy shit. What's this guy gonna say? This little worm creature. This blob of slime with a beard hanging off of it. What's he gonna say?
But we need the leadership in the West. I've seen it in some countries. Macron sometimes comes off very strong. Britain has come off very strong in this. And right now, the Biden administration is trying to surge support into Ukraine. And I think President Trump, when he comes in, is going to realize that whatever his relationship is with Mr. Putin and however many times he's called him, he's not going to easily give in and sacrifice Ukraine. He can't afford to. And Putin's already threatened him.
Piers.
Putin's already told him that he's worried about his safety.
Mad.
That's like Tony Soprano saying to you, I'm really worried about the way you're walking across the street.
I love how Piers doesn't want to cut him off because he's probably like, he's probably fucking gooned about 7 times listening to this shit.
So I'm not angry, Piers, except that there's a lot of misinformation out
I hear
there.
you.
Yeah.
Can I get in here and respond now, Piers, please?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, General, thank you. Just if you don't mind, I'll bring the others in. I've got to say, you have articulated exactly what I've been feeling this entire time. And I've started to think I was going completely mad. But to have somebody with your experience, particularly about from the very start of NATO, outlining what I believe has been the way this has all played out, is actually quite reassuring to me that I've not gone nuts. Let me bring in Cenk, because you've not had a chance to respond for a while. No, Scott, I'm going to come to you. Scott, I will come to you after Cenk. But I must let Cenk have his say.
Allow me to quote from my book, my little book. 1 inch eastward. Allow me to quote from my book, the Victoria Nuland Call. Please, Piers. What's he going to say? What does he
You've
want?
been listening to all this, very different opinions, but what is your reaction?
Yeah, I want to tell you my thoughts, and then I actually would love to ask General Clark a question. And so, look, I understand both sides of this equation. And so if you're the Ukrainians, imagine if some other nation had taken 20% of America. Would we want to give up? Would we want to go, oh, yeah, it's okay. Just take Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, etc. It's fine. No, we'd hate it, and we'd fight forever, right? So I understand that. On the other hand, when General
Clark... going to ask the general about Palestine and make the same analogy? Maybe?
Starts talking about the nuclear weapons, I get super scared.
Or nukes.
Because what if Trump's bluff gets called at some point? Trump's main bluff is, oh yeah, you better not mess with me. I'm crazy. I'll make this war much bigger if you mess with me.
Grumble.
Yeah, but what if Putin says, yeah, go ahead? Well, then we're in a lot of trouble, right? Because I don't want to get involved in a war like this. I don't want to get involved with nuclear weapons, etc. On the other hand, your point about Russian aggression is definitely true. I can't stand these people starting wars, taking territory, And it breaks my heart to see it, the kidnapped children, et cetera. So, but General Clark, the question I wanted to ask you, and you know how much I respect you, and we have a relationship before. And by the way, the audience should know, General Clark is the one that called out the neocons for trying to invade 7 countries at once, including the Iraq War. And so he's earned a lot of respect by doing that. But General Clark, this is a genuine question, which is, okay, but if we go with what you're saying,
yep.
How long do we fight? How long does Ukraine fight? How much money do we spend? How many years of war do we have to endure? And what if Ukraine just doesn't win? So let's say we go another 2 years, 5 years, 20 years. How do we resolve it if Ukraine can't win?
The fact is that Ukraine does this with or without anyone's help. Or as, in case Piers Morgan's listening, they will fight, if necessary, for years, if necessary, alone. They're not giving up because they know the cost of giving up. If you give up territory, kids get kidnapped and taken to Russia, so they turn them into Russians. They know like what happened with Bucha. People end up just like sprawled in the streets, shot dead after they've surrendered. That's why they're not going to give up. They will fight them on the fucking barley fields, or whatever the fuck Ukrainians have, okay? The black soil. And if you're America and you've got allies in Europe and you depend largely, your American dream depends in some part on trade with Europe and these countries being somewhat stable, and you watch these countries get destabilized, then you're going to struggle as well. Your status, after all, as a world leader making deals with other countries is going to be largely weakened if you can't guarantee anyone's security. So it's in America's interest as much as anyone else. And people can talk about how long is it going to take or how much money. Do you think people were seriously asking questions like this in the Second World War, or in basically any war where a country is just literally fighting for its own survival as a state, for its own independence? Not really. The people in Ukraine aren't going to be asking that question very much. And I don't know if he cares about stats or the cost or anything like that. Most of the arms that have been given to Ukraine were weapons that were old and were just collecting dust otherwise. And even if you compare it to Lend-Lease, I'm pretty sure the amount of money that's gone to Ukraine from America is still dwarfed by the amount that went onto Lend-Lease. And again, America's military spending as a proportion of GDP is something like 3%. 3%. It was 15 back in Vietnam, right? As a percentage of the federal budget, same story. Like, America has the space and they gain from it as well. Like, part of the American dream isn't just being able to make deals around the world and to guarantee security and be the world police and the big head honcho or anything else. It's all of that is tied in. Like, the fact that America made a guarantee to Ukraine in 1994 that they were willing to say, yeah, this is our word, we will defend you. And if they fail to uphold that, other countries that are small and are non-aligned and are threatened by their neighbors are going to go somewhere else for help, okay? And then that strengthens countries that are actually quite threatening to the rest of the world. That strengthens people like China and Russia and Iran. So I think Americans are doing themselves a real disservice. I think they're doing themselves a real disservice by abandoning their obligations like that.
Well, I think what you have to do is understand that this war will go on until Putin believes he can't win. So all the discussion in the West about how to preemptively surrender territory and all this it all feeds Putin's appetite. He understands from all this discussion that the West is weakening in its will, and therefore if he just keeps shoving soldiers forward, that eventually the West will comply and cut off assistance to Ukraine and tell Ukraine, good luck, hope you enjoy being part of Poland again, because that's his aim. He doesn't really care about Lviv. What he wants is the north coast of the Black Sea and Odessa, and of course Kharkiv and Kyiv and so forth, and then he wants the rest of Europe, Eastern Europe, that used to be under Soviet dominion. He needs this in order to be able to confront China, and this is the ultimate fear of Russia and its leadership, and they know they can't confront China unless they have control over Eastern Europe, including the Baltics and Poland and the rest of the Balkan Peninsula. And so it's a long-term geostrategic game. And Cenk, I just tell you this, there's no American soldiers over there getting killed. And most of the money that's been appropriated by the United States has gone to buy new weapons in the United States. We're giving them the old stuff, the old ATACMS. We've just recently even reprioritized our military sales program. We're still selling ATACMS to Morocco. Now, why does Morocco need 60 ATACMS? I don't know. But, we're selling stuff off Patriots all over the world. That stuff should go to Ukraine. As long as the United States stands firm, we won't have nuclear weapons and nuclear war. Putin doesn't want it either. But he does believe right now that we will collapse. And he will continue to threaten the nuclear and play the nuclear card, because that's the way the Russians play it. And so you just have to stand firm against it. And you need strong leadership, and you need the American people behind you. And what you have to understand is that Putin understands how to manipulate public opinion. In every country in Europe, there are people there saying, just like one of the gentlemen on this panel said, you know, this is crazy, and people are getting killed, and I'm tired of seeing people dying, and we've got to have peace. In 1937, 38,
they bring it back.
Everybody had fresh memories of the First World War. It was a horrible experience. A whole generation of British young men were wiped out. The French got so bad that in one group of French divisions, they pulled out every 10th soldier and shot him for cowardice. Nobody wanted a repeat of the First World War. And so Hitler occupied the Rhineland against instruction. Hitler rearmed. Hitler rebuilt the military. And at every stage, there were people who said, well, this is really dangerous, but please, we can't think about it.
Can someone link Anna's content? Can't find it. I don't think Anna makes content. She's just on Twitter. And she appears on streams.
It can't be another world war. So we're revisiting this in a slightly different form today. If we believe in democracy,
Look, guy is smiling because he thinks it is the... he is one of those Dunning-Kruger dipshits who thinks that anytime anyone compares anything to Hitler, it must be because they are below his intellect. He thinks it's like thought terminating or whatever. You know, even though I'm not saying Putin and Hitler are the same. They have very different motivations. I'm also saying that in the last 100 years in Europe, not many leaders went around annexing other territory on the grounds of uniting blood and soil, okay? Like, not many people were like, there are people who talk like us over there, and we need to keep them safe. Okay, listen, I know we killed a lot of them, but we're here. And don't worry, thanks for letting us do that, everyone else, because over there, they're a bit less like us. You know, don't worry about that. We're not going there. Listen, I'm just saying, they were threatening us. They were. I'm just saying, not many European leaders do this, okay? Barring Hitler and Putin.
Believe in what we set up, if we believe in the lessons we learned from the Second World War, then we've got to stand firm against Mr. Putin. President Biden should have said to him, look, bud, you come after Ukraine, I promise you, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. But he didn't say that. And he's never...
Milosevic? Yeah, people don't like him either. And we're talking about scale here as well, okay? Like rebuilding a lost empire.
Never said that.
No, he hasn't.
You come after Ukraine, I promise you, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. But he didn't say that. And he's never said that.
No, he hasn't.
That's the policy has to start.
Okay, General, thank you very much. Let me bring Scott Halton in to respond to that, because you're being compared to the people back in the late 30s who just didn't see the danger of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis.
It's completely preposterous. And It's the refuge of scoundrels who have run out of arguments, I think.
I told you. He's above it. Does his book mention the Azov battalion? I wonder.
Anyone could see that. It's the same thing as this endless claim. I mean, isn't this just a talking point that anyone who disagrees is repeating Russian talking points?
Yep.
I don't sit around watching RT all day, memorizing what the Russian regime says and repeating that. I wrote a book that's...
Okay, you stumbled into it by mistake. Excuse me, I'm not a... You really think I'm a paid propagandist? I do this for free, bro.
775,000 words. Most of it is American graybeards talking about how they know better than the thing that they're about to do and then doing it anyway. And, you know, one of the things that I talk about in there, although I couldn't find too much about General Clark's role in this, but when there was a debate, and I'd like to pose this in the form of a question to him, when there was a debate in the 1990s in the Bill Clinton administration about whether to do NATO expansion or whether to do the Partnership for Peace, was it not the Secretary of Defense, William Perry, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, John Shalikashvili, with the help of General Clark, weren't they the ones who argued the Pentagon for peace? Let's do the Partnership for Peace instead of NATO expansion. And it was Richard Holbrooke and Talbot and Lake who outclassed the Pentagon in office politics and forced through NATO expansion instead. And the William Perry, John Shalikashvili, and I believe at the time, Wesley Clark argument was, we don't want to redraw the dividing line in Europe. Yes, it's true. A lot of these countries that used to be dominated by Soviet communists in the battle days, of course, want to join NATO. But we got to look at what's good for us. And what's most important for us is that we keep a decent relationship, a stable relationship with Russia. And one great way to do that would be to, as they said they were going to do at the time, Piers, turn NATO into a political organization, sort of like the EU plus America. But then they would have, instead of an alliance, because there's no enemy anymore, now we would have the Partnership for Peace, a new security architecture, and Russia, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine.
Did a guy with a gray beard say the problem with this conflict are graybeards asking like they know everything? Yeah? What's wrong with that?
Would be members of it. And then that way, Ukraine's neutrality as a obviously extremely important country locked between European civilization and Russia there will not, the controversy will be settled with a de facto permanent neutrality there. And then what happened was the Hawks won the argument. And then as all of the graybeards said at the time, oh no, you see what we're doing? We're just redrawing the line. The policy has gone from containment to friends to neo-containment. This is before W. Bush ever even came to town.
Okay, well, let me put that point then to someone who, by the way, for the record, does not have a grey beard, General Clark. But would you like to respond to what you just heard?
It's actually, you're right. We had a multiplicity of interests with Russia at the time the Clinton administration came in. And the first interest was to control the nuclear weapons that were in Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and the loose nukes argument took priority. And we got legislation passed, the Nunn-Lugar Agreement amendment. Basically, we put billions of dollars into helping control the former Soviets' nuclear arsenal. And as part of that, we assured Ukraine that when they gave up their nuclear weapons, and Russia signed on to this, that their boundaries would be respected. You see, there in 1991, Ukraine had already voted in favor of independence. The people in Ukraine never wanted to be under Russian control. It's a separate culture. It's a different language. If you look up, and I don't know if you speak Russian, but apparently you don't, but I do. And I thought, well, I'll just go.
There's no fucking way this guy speaks another language. What? With that accent. What the fuck? This guy's got so many secret weapons. This guy has one of the lost nuclear weapons in his kitchen.
Signori, questo è un vecchio amico mio, Colonnello Hans Landa della SS.
Buongiorno.
Probably. Okay. I'm just something like that.
You know, brush up on my Russian and be able to speak Ukrainian. It's a different language. And it's a different culture. It's a different history. Ukraine's been independent in the past. And it was one of the first subjects of Russia's imperial ambitions going back to Catherine the Great. And the way that it operates is it's not a nice colonialism. It's an ugly colonialism in which Russia says, I'm in charge here. I want a part of your business. And they buy people and they influence. And I've met many Ukrainian leaders over the years, including some who've made billions of dollars off their associations with Russia. So when the United States looked at this in the early 1990s, we were hopeful that there would actually be democratic reform in Russia.
What is a nice colonialism? Oh, of course you think there's such a thing as a nice colonialism, white man. Nice colonialism, nice colonialism is when America does it, obviously.
But it didn't happen. And as Bill Clinton traveled abroad in 1993 and in 1994, and he looked at it himself and talked to these East European leaders who were emerging, they begged Clinton to give us the protection of NATO. And so that...
The Falklands is nice imperialism. Yeah. That's quite true. That Argentinian imperialism is pretty cringe compared to British imperialism in the Falklands.
Weekend that you're referring to when Al Gore made the speech that Richard Holbrooke wrote in Berlin. And yes, I checked with my bosses in the Pentagon. I said, no, of course we're not in charge of. We don't want NATO enlarged. We got enough problems. Don't bring any other issues. Partnership for Peace had already been established. Russia was a member of it, and I said to my boss, I said, they keep putting this thing in here about enlarging NATO. And I keep scratching it out, and it keeps coming back in. And sure enough, Vice President Gore gave that speech, and he gave it at the direction of the President of the United States because President Clinton himself, in going through Eastern Europe, had looked and listened to the leadership there. He knew the history. He knew foreign relations. He knew foreign policy. And he determined that the best avenue for peace forward was to both provide security for Eastern Europe through opportunities for NATO membership if they wanted it, and work with Russia and give Russia a special relationship with NATO. So we formed the NATO-Russia Council. The NATO-Russia Council had all the members of NATO listening to Russia and all of its concerns in 1997, 1998, 1999. I was there sitting in that council
during Chechnya.
Former Russian Foreign Minister Yevgeny Primakov gave us a lecture. Russia has no permanent friends. Russia has only permanent interests. And he's looking at me, and I know who he was. He's the guy who basically started the Palestinian terrorist organizations as a KGB agent.
Oh no. Arafat KGB theory. Oh shit. Bro, I want to just like follow this guy around for a week and just ask him questions.
Interest, and he's looking at me, and I know who he was. He's the guy who basically started the Palestinian terrorist organizations as a KGB agent. And he knew who I was, and we knew each other. And I knew what he was saying. He was saying that Russia didn't appreciate NATO, wouldn't cooperate with NATO, and was going to go its own way. He later ran for president, lost to Vladimir Putin. But the point is that the United States worked assiduously to try to bring stability to Eastern Europe, including working with Russia. And it was Russia that really didn't want this. From the beginning, we actually had hopes that Russia might join NATO. But from the beginning of Putin's time, he crushed democracy, crushed dissent.
I'm sorry. I was reading a little bit about the PLO yesterday, and It's actually quite amazing how they were able to launder their international reputation so well. It's funny watching videos of Arafat in the 70s being like, watching him just like riz up the Western press and shit like that and the UN while he's literally leading, directing attacks against Israeli civilian and internationals as well. Like, how did they do that? It's so impressive. Fuck. And obviously they had their little about turn and got the approval of people like Mandela and shit like that. But Jesus, it would be like 10 years from now, you've just got like Hamas guys going on to the BBC and like people thinking they're like quite funny, you know, like funny little duders. That is weird.
And step by step consolidated power using the mafia, the Russian mafia, and the intelligence agencies. And so we are.
Didn't Arafat carry a gun at the UN? I don't think he carried a gun at the UN. I think he said, I come here with an olive branch in one hand and a freedom fighter's rifle in the other. But I don't think he took his rifle, did he? Did he? Wait, surely I'm imagining.
PLO leader Yasser Arafat decided to pursue the path of diplomacy.
This is in the 70s, right? This is in 74, right? And it's just like 4 years later, you get the Coastal Road Massacre, where PLO guys, yeah, they cornered a bus in near Tel Aviv, killing 38 civilians, 13 children. Yeah, Fatah. And he's just vibing.
بغصن الزيتون في يدي وببندقية الثائر في يدي فلا تسقط الغصن الأخضر من يدي لا تسقط الغصن الأخضر من يدي لا تسقط الغصن الأخضر من يدي لا تسقط الغصن الأخضر من يدي.
In November 1974, Yasser Arafat received a standing ovation at the General Assembly of the United Nations. He had spoken of a peaceful solution to Palestinian demands for a homeland. For the guerrilla leader...
The hand waving is such an Arab... yeah, it's just a threat. Yeah, I know, right? But it sounds so charming. I just want to be his friend. Don't you? Well, yeah, they all do. Like Israelis and Palestinians, they all talk like they're in fucking. They all talk like they're in Lord of the Rings or some shit. Yeah.
We're in the position where we are today. I've always wished I could talk to Putin and say,
"Oh wait, what's this? Is this different?" AP covers up Yasser Arafat's gun at the United Nations. Wait, where's the picture? Is there not a picture? Where was this? 74. Did they show you? Okay, he brought a gun. But they don't show you it. Okay, whatever.
Look, it's not that we disrespect you. We like Russia. We love Russian music.
Oh. Fly, fools. Olive branch and a gun. A United Nations guard said there was a gun, and one of Mr. Arafat's bodyguards told the Associated Press, it's not only real, it's loaded. They don't make them like that anymore. I think it was 75. It was 75 when the General Assembly passed that resolution that just was like, yeah, Zionism is racist. Those guys were pretty cooked. Yeah. Resolution 3379, which declared Zionism to be a form of racism and racial discrimination. This is why Rosa Parks and those, there's a couple of hundred civil rights leaders wrote that open letter, signed an open letter opposing it. What is it here? Is this him with his? Oh yeah. Wait. No. Look at it. He's got little fucking cartridges. Huh. The open carry General Assembly. Listen, they just have a gun culture, you know? A musical, poetic gun culture. Pretty wacky. Okay. Where's the olive branch? I don't think he brought an olive branch with him. Was that part of the messaging? He's in the props. He's in the props collection. Okay, I need a gun. Do you not want an olive branch? Nah. Fuck. We'll take a metaphorical one.
Music, culture, your history. There's so many great things that have come out of Russia. But you can't step on other people. You can't treat people that way. You can't invade other countries. We're not going to invade you. There's no threat here. I was with the Russian foreign minister when we were dealing with the Conventional Foreign Forces in Europe Treaty in 1998. And Minister Ivanov said, well, under this treaty, in a time of tension, NATO could put a division in Slovakia on the borders of Russia or Belarus. And I said, Mr. Minister, one NATO division on the borders of Belarus is a threat to Russia? Come on now. Ivanov laughed. He knew it wasn't a threat.
Yeah.
He knew it.
Yeah.
And so, you just, I'm not accusing anybody of reading and repeating what Russia's telling you to say. I'm saying there's a lot of misinformation out here.
Yeah.
But we are where we are. And the only way.
Well, can I ask just one short follow-up there, Piers?
Very, very quickly. We have to wrap, but very quickly, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, very briefly. I wonder, General Clark, if you're aware that your then boss, William Perry, he later told The Guardian that it was the greatest regret of his life that he did not do every single thing he could to stop Clinton from going down the path of NATO expansion.
Well, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. Here's what I'll do, Scott. I'll just ask General Clark, and please be brief if you don't mind, General Clark, but was Clinton right or wrong, looking with hindsight?
Well, I think Clinton was right in hindsight because when you unravel what actually happened with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and I have the greatest respect for Dr. Perry, but the KGB, there's a book written on this called Putin's People, and you can read it. But basically, the KGB saw it collapsing in the late 1980s. They didn't trust Gorbachev. They moved the money to the West. When democracy started, most of the people in the political parties in Russia were former intelligence agents. They'd been schooled in how to campaign. They formed different political parties to make it appear as though there were different parties. But in reality, they were anxious to regain power. And so we never really followed through with the opportunity that the dissolution of the Soviet Union presented to us.
Right.
I mean, we could have sent democracy trainers into the Soviet Union. We didn't. We had the National Endowment for Democracy. It was just scratching the surface. We never really reached out to the Russian people. It's a different culture. They don't understand it. They're isolated. And just like the American people don't understand foreign policy, neither do the Russian people. A UN diplomat told me once, he said, you Americans are like the Russians. Most of your people don't even have passports. You live far from national borders. You don't have any appreciation for other nationalities.
Shit.
We could have extended a stronger hand in friendship. And I'm talking not Clinton. I'm talking about George H. Bush when it happened.
Yeah.
We just didn't do it. And we had a very brief window to make a great difference. We didn't. I think that the protection we provided through NATO membership for the countries of Eastern Europe and that we want to extend to Ukraine has been really important. If you look, I drove a couple of times from eastern Poland into Ukraine. In eastern Poland, the houses are painted, the fields are cultivated, everything looks good. As soon as you go across that border, the difference in prosperity is marked. And it's marked because Ukraine hasn't had the protection of the European Union and NATO. And that's why the people in 2014, 2013 in Maidan, they saw this. Ukraine and Poland were economically similar in the 1980s. But by 2014, Poland's GDP per capita was 2 or 3 times what it was in Ukraine, simply because Poland had the association with the West, with its security provided by NATO. So we've got to get through what is more than a bump in a road. It's a critical period in international policy where we're going to decide whether the rule of law prevails or we're going to go back to the 19th century competition between empires and emperors, and to hell with the people underneath. And that's
Clark,
where we are right.
I've got to leave it there. I don't want to, actually. I could honestly do another 2 or 3 hours of this. It has been an absolutely fascinating conversation with all of you. I really appreciate you all joining me. I've got to leave it there reluctantly, but thank you very much indeed.
Hey, thanks, everybody.
Piers, nice to be with you.
Thank you, General. Well, just before we go, a quick look at what on earth has gone on in South Korea over the past 48 hours is the American political analyst on...
Whatever. Big deal. You know, you do a martial law, then you get rid of it. And you're an incel, apparently. I don't know what's going on in Korea. Give a shit. That was a good showing. Good showing from Anna and the W General. Whew. What a dude. The guardrails held. Yeah.